October 6th, 2020 meeting of the Miami Township Montgomery County Board of Trustees to order. If everybody could please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Morse.
Here.
Mr. Culp.
Here.
Mr. Posey.
Here.
We begin every meeting with the reading of the casualties. Mr. Posey, military casualties.
We have two today. Air Force Senior Airman Jason Kai Fan, participating in Operation Inherent Resolve, passed on September 12, 2020. He was 26 years old from Anaheim, California, and died in a single vehicle accident while conducting patrol outside the perimeter of Ali Al Salam Air Force Base in Kuwait, Air Base in Kuwait. Air Force Staff Sergeant Ronald J. Ouellette, participating also in Operation Inherent Resolve, passed on September 14, 2020. He was 23 years old from Merrimack, New Hampshire, and also died in an accident on the flight line of Ali Al Salam Air Force Base in Kuwait.
Thank you. Chief Stegelmeyer, first responder casualties.
Good evening, Board. The following is the list of the first responder casualties for the period of September 16th to October 6th, 2020. Sergeant Alvin R. Subrenes Lebron, Puerto Rican Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, Puerto Rico. End of watch September 16th, 2020. Firefighter Charles Morton, San Bernardino National Forest District, California. End of watch September 17th, 2020. Second Assistant Chief James P. Brooks, Jr., Whitehall Volunteer Fire Department, New York. End of watch September 18th, 2020. Sergeant Charles Edward Norton, Richmond County Sheriff's Office, Georgia. End of watch September 20th, 2020. Deputy Sheriff Charles Christopher Smith, McLennan County Sheriff's Office, Texas. End of watch September 21st, 2020. Deputy Chief Jason Daniel Dean, Clayton Fire Department, North Carolina. End of watch September 22nd, 2020. Firefighter Pilot Ricky Fulton, Aero Seat Incorporated, Colorado. End of watch September 22nd, 2020. Chief Richard Todd, Salem Volunteer Fire Department, West Virginia. End of watch September 23rd, 2020. Master Jail Officer Robert Charles Sanukian, Hampton Roads Regional Jail, Virginia. End of watch September 24th, 2020. Sergeant Ethan Taskin, Anderson Police Department, South Carolina. End of watch September 25th, 2020. Deputy Sheriff Kenny Ingram, Fulton County Sheriff's Office, Georgia. End of watch September 29th, 2020. Deputy Sheriff Anthony White, Fulton County Sheriff's Office, Georgia. End of watch September 29th, 2020. Police Officer Jacob Hancher, Myrtle Beach Police Department, South Carolina. End of watch October 3rd, 2020.
Thank you. In addition to the first responder and military casualties, I would like to recognize two individuals who have passed who were longtime supporters and volunteers with the township. Ms. Karen Kresh was a longtime member of the Miami Township Zoning Commission. She passed away on October 3rd. She served on the commission for 16 years, many of those years serving as chairwoman. During the years that Austin Landing was being developed, Karen, as chairwoman, used her expertise and professionalism to lead many long meetings to create a better development within the community. Karen was a leader and dedicated public servant who will be dearly missed. Ms. Shirley Omantansky, a longtime member, Miami Township trustee, passed away on September 16th. She was a lifelong township resident, was elected in 1976 as the first female trustee before stepping down in 2003. During this time, she was board president 5 terms. She also served as a volunteer administrator for the township, coordinating with the fire and the police departments, working full-time hours. Shirley was an early member of the Community Foundation of Miami Township and was a staunch proponent of the township's parks. In 2015, a 3-acre park was named in her honor. She worked on dozens of activities, commissions, and boards throughout Montgomery County, as well as at the state level with the Ohio Township Association. She was born July 4th, 1934, a graduate of Miamisburg High School and Otterbein College. She is survived by 2 sons and a granddaughter. If everyone could please join me in recognizing a moment of silence. Thank you. I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion.
Any discussion?
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Culp,
Aye.
Mr. Posey.
Aye.
All right, we have a presentation on the Montgomery County Regional Dispatch Center. Are our guests available? Sheriff Streck, Captain Wheeler, we welcome you.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Mr. Morris, Tyler Small is also joining the meeting.
Hello, Mr. Small. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. So I guess I'll go ahead and start. I mean, we really don't have a presentation for you. Obviously, Miami Township's been involved in the RDC since the very beginning, since the 2006 GeoCom study was completed, and that was the beginning of the RDC. And then obviously March of 2009, it opened up. We obviously have a history with Miami Township. At the time that we took over Miami Township, the RDC wasn't created yet. So it was kind of an abrupt changeover to where we actually staffed the Miami Township Dispatch Center for quite a while the RDC was being built. So, you know, we have a long history with Miami Township, and we value that greatly. So we're not going to be long. I'm not going to be quick. The main thing I wanted to talk about with you guys tonight is kind of our relationship with Montgomery County now. In the past, we all know, especially Ron, in past meetings for many years, the only ones who were speaking up about some new ideas, let's try this, let's look at this kind of idea to try to get more funding into the RDC was Ron, if Miamisburg, then obviously the Miami Township Chief and myself. So, you know, we have fought for a long time to try to stabilize prices, which I think we've done an okay job at, and to get some new ideas in there. So I'm not here to disparage anybody, but I will say the relationship that the RDC shares with the county now is much different. In the past, it was literally still thought of as the Sheriff's Office Dispatch Center by certain people in the county. Now, the RDC actually has a relationship to where they are a service that Montgomery County provides with all of our partners. And what I mean by that is if Jay Wheeler, you know, gets a call from Ron Hess and they want to do something different, or we want to try this, you know, the days of having to call the sheriff and have the sheriff call the assistant administrator and then get to the administrator are over. Jay Wheeler has a direct line, just like every other service that Montgomery County offers, which does make a very big difference. So I did want to discuss that and just let you know. You know, we Tyler Smalls on the call today. I'll let him talk about his thing, but with Tyler and Michael Colbert, the county administrator at the helm, you know, the thought process out there about providing a service to all of our partners at the RDC has really become one of the things that they want to make sure that we do and we create. So it's the days of going in to an ECPC meeting and saying, hey, what about if we tried this and this and this? And you know, a lot of times that just went in one ear out the other. Those days are over. We we have an administration. I mean, hopefully you know that the sheriff's office was always willing to do anything and try anything for our partners. But now we have partners in the county and the office management and budget and the commission office and the administration office that does really support the RDC. And they have some ideas that they're going to try. So when we obviously have the same concerns that you do about cost. In 2006, Miami Township was paying $459,000 a year for dispatching. In 2020, it's $391. We all want to see those numbers go down. I myself, I pay $2.3 million out of my budget a year. And then I obviously have 3 townships that also pay, Harrison Township being the second highest payment that the RDC receives besides the city of Dayton and of course the sheriff's office. So, everybody associated is very concerned about the budget. We all want it to go down. We want the RDC to be a success, and the RDC works. We're quick to tell everybody we are an emergency communications center. We're an emergency PSAP. Everything that everybody has had nightmares about over the past several years went through the RDC, and those people handled it phenomenal. There are a lot of calls that come in, but there's going to be a lot of calls into most dispatch centers, especially the more you add. We obviously will always put a priority on 911 and emergency calls, and then we go to non-emergency calls, and then we go to service calls, and that's the stack we go in. So they do a great job. They are busy, but once again, being regional, everybody being on the same radio. I mean, as far as today went, if Charlie was probably listening, they had to listen to the traffic. There was a shooting at a funeral that multiple agencies had to be involved in, and once again, having the RDC handling one situation is a very good thing when it comes to those situations. So I am going to give my people a shout out when it comes to that. We are working on sharing our CAD. We obviously provide RMS and some other things to Miami Township, and we try to do that, at no cost, or at least very little cost as far as coming up with some reports with Sundog and things like that. But we try to do that at no cost. But we're also in the process of bringing other agencies on as far as CAD goes. So the idea, and Mr. Morris was at the last CPC meeting, so I apologize if you're hearing this twice, but the idea of bringing Inglewood and everyone they dispatch for, we're now in talks with Huber Heights and everyone they dispatch for, so that we're all going to be on the same CAD, and that is very important when it comes to every dispatch center being able to look at what the other crews are doing and the other fire crews are doing and things like that. So we are making some changes. And once again, Tyler's here to talk about some finances and things like that. And of course, Captain Wheeler's here who is at the head of the RDC and running the RDC, and I'll let him talk, but we'll be glad to answer any questions, but I will be quiet right now and probably let Jay talk. So once again, thanks for letting me speak. Thanks for letting me be at your meeting. Wish it could have been in person, but hopefully someday we will all get to hang out in person together.
Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Small or Mr. Wheeler?
I'll go ahead. Thank you for letting us speak tonight in regards to the Regional Dispatch Center. I am Jay Wheeler, the captain in charge of the day-to-day operations. So I prepared a statement. I can't speak off the cuff like the sheriff does as well. But at the RDC, our main goal is the services we provide to the public and our client agencies. We strive for perfection, but realize this is a difficult goal to obtain. Dispatchers and staff at the RDC handle nearly 1 million phone calls, over 500,000 police calls for service, and over 75,000 fire and EMS calls for service every year. These phone calls being answered promptly, call entry being handled efficiently, and finally crews being dispatched and supported with little issue is a huge priority. We unfortunately do have times where one or more of these priorities does not go as smoothly as we hope. Mistakes have been made as we strive for that perfection. We have measurable goals for answering our 911 calls. Like the sheriff said, that 911 is the priority at the RDC in any dispatch center. These goals are mandated by the state of Ohio as part of our annual support and compliance reviews. To date in 2020, we've met each quarterly goal, and in the past 3 support and compliance audits, we've shown 100% compliance to those measures. I provided Mr. Posey, at his request, the last several years of our performance measurement assessments, which showed compliance to these answering times. We live in a wireless world and at times impacts the business of 911 negatively. For instance, crash at a major intersection in Miami Township at the afternoon rush hour. Nearly every car not involved has at least one, if not more, cell phones inside that will call 911 to notify us of that crash. Imagine 20 people call 911 to report this crash along with everything else going on throughout our service areas. We can't answer every one of these calls at the same time. We can't plan for these types of events. We staff the RDC based on known busy times of the day. Based on our current model, we cannot overstaff simply on what could happen, as that would make our rates skyrocket for our client agencies. We are transparent in our deficiencies as well. Each year at the ECPC meeting, and Mr. Morris should have received a copy of this at the ECPC meeting, provide a document that kind of shows a year in review for what we do. Review shows the amount of incoming and outgoing phone calls, police and fire calls for service, formal discipline issued during the year. 2019, the RDC had 7 incidents resulting in formal discipline. These were performance-related incidents such as failing to enter a call for service, incorrect call types entered, failing to dispatch calls, etc. The RDC handled well over 900,000 phone calls in 2019. In a year we all hope will be over quickly due to various incidents that impacted most of us in some way, such as Memorial Day tornadoes, HSK rally, and the Oregon District shooting. All of these 3 events were handled directly by employees of the RDC without issue. Myself and Sergeant Lewis, we both handle incoming complaints directly from agencies. We can only work on the information provided to us. If we're not notified of an issue, we cannot act upon it. We regularly hear complaints from dispatchers, officers, or agencies through the grapevine and not formally. By a formal complaint, speaking of reaching out to us through our email, our regional dispatch center help desk, or contacting the on-duty supervisor to have us look into an issue. When a complaint or issue is received, it is reviewed by one or both of us to ensure things are handled properly or improperly if the case. Either way, we will make our findings known to the person or agency requesting the inquiry. Many times we get requests to look into something, we need additional information. We will request that information directly if we're not able to decipher it ourselves. Lastly, and we have a great relationship, like the sheriff said, with the county administration. We're working with them closely on the future of the regional dispatch center. We've made great strides recently in the impact of our level of service and fiscal responsibility. But thanks for your time, and after Tyler goes, we can answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Small.
Everybody, thank you for the invite. I appreciate being with you this evening and be able to speak a little bit about what we've done with the RDC and what we anticipate in the future. So as the sheriff, kind of relayed and we discussed at the last CCPC meeting, what's interesting about the county, if you look at it, is there's not many people currently in administration who were here 2 years ago. This is a new role for me. I've been with the county for 5 years, was with the purchasing director for the first 4 years with the county, and have been the assistant county administrator for the last year and a half. The county administrator has been here for 2 years. The sheriff's been in his existing role for 2 years. Captain Wheeler's been in his existing role for 2 years. Our county OMB director has also been in his role for 2 years. So there's kind of a new influx of people into new roles. So naturally with that, there's different perspectives that kind of come into play, and At least I'll speak for myself, as I come into a new role and I understand kind of the things that kind of either I'm responsible for, or I have areas that I assist in, like with the RDC, with the sheriff. We want to take a look at those things and see, how are things going, and what are areas in which we can improve, because there's always room for improvement, and it's just understanding where those areas are for improvement. With 911, County 911, it's a little interesting. Starting at the 911 plan, or the County 911 plan, that plan has been updated since 1987. That's something that we discussed. The 911 Executive Committee, the county-wide committee, hasn't met since 2017. The plan is from 1987. The TAC committee has never met. So that's something that we're looking at to say, how do we really want to do? How do we need to do 911 across the county? What changes need to be made? The 911 plan is what governs all of the PSAPs. I think it's 8 PSAPs, 7 PSAPs. It governs how those PSAPs operate and what the interoperability is between those PSAPs and as well as the phone system. So kind of understanding what that is, that group is convening. We've met once. The TAC is currently meeting. We're going to be reviewing the 911 plan. So we kind of have a better idea of what should be happening across the county. Concerning the RDC directly, as a member of that group, as a representative of the Board of County Commissioners, one of the things that we looked at when Michael actually brought it up is when we were speaking of the RDC, he was asking about the lease and kind of why we're in the lease and so on and so forth. So we did analysis, and the county was committed to making the regional dispatch center work. Upon analysis, the analysis showed it makes a lot of sense to purchase the building. So the county did that. We purchased a building at the end of last year and passed along a savings to the members. With that, that was kind of phase one of how do we, when we look at the RDC budget, what are some ways in which we can look at this a little differently? What are some ways that we can be innovative and we can be more efficient and we can pass savings along to everybody? Obviously in 2008, I think is when the RDC was created. I was obviously not in this role. But it's my understanding the whole point regarding the regional dispatch center was, well, it makes sense to do dispatch under economies of scale. Everybody's under the same system. Everybody's using the same software packages. And so it just made sense from a budgetary perspective as well as an interoperability perspective. And so that's kind of how the RDC got its start. And so now, it's been 13 years, 12 years since that has happened. It's with the new individuals we have in seats, it's kind of looking at, what are some ways that we can improve. So we purchased a building. We did that. We're looking at adding tenants. The first and second floor are empty. So we're actually in design for a tenant on the second floor. We've got space on the first floor. We'd love to bring in additional tenants into the first floor to be able to share additional cost, to pass those cost savings on to the members of the RDC. We're looking at the contracts, elevator contracts, maintenance contracts on the building. Can we leverage the existing county agreements? Can we leverage additional economies of scale to drive down maintenance costs in the building? So we're looking at that. And the kind of phase 3 of this is looking at additional, how do we bring in additional people to the regional dispatch center? Looking, are there people out there that are interested? Are we able to talk to jurisdictions and bring them on? Obviously, we mentioned Inglewood and their CAD. That was voted on at the last CCPC meeting, and they're going to be joining for CAD. Well, why are they doing that? Well, because there's operational efficiencies that I can't speak to at a great level of detail. Captain Wheeler could, but having access to those other apparatuses on the system, it leverages efficiencies that are important, especially in 911, where how quick you answer a call and how quick you can dispatch things and how quick you can respond is a life or death scenario. So all that, to be said, one of the other things I want to mention too is with the ECPC meeting, we're looking at the bylaws and revising the bylaws. So kind of with all of these new faces we have at the table, we want to do this well. If we're going to do regional dispatch, then we want to do it well. And if we're not going to do it well, then we're not going to do it. So we're applying resources to this. We're putting ideas in place. being able to rewrite the 911 plan, rewrite our bylaws at the ECPC level of our PSAP. It's going to allow us to kind of hit reset in terms of what we're doing, and to ask the question of how do we want to move forward. We've already proven through the purchase of the building and through the savings we've passed back through the mention. We'd mentioned credits at the last ECPC meeting, and passing credits back to the members. We've already proven that in just a matter of a year, the changes that we made are already paying dividends, and we expect that to continue. So, we just ask for patience as we go through this and we kind of reset how we do this. We expect there to be big changes. And, we appreciate all the members of, the Regional Dispatch Center and the ECPC group, and look forward to working with them for, the future of that dispatch center.
Excellent. I want to thank you each for giving us your time and the presentation today. Before I open the floor up to questions from perhaps the other trustees, in your presentation, you gave a number of acronyms that I fortunately do understand because I'm on a lot of these committees, but maybe some of the residents who are watching this on tape or here live, if you could maybe just explain what the letters RDC, ECPC, CAD, and PSAP stand for.
Yeah, the RDC stands for the Montgomery County Regional Dispatch Center. CAD is computer aided dispatch. So when we have two distinct systems in the RDC, and actually every dispatch center, you have a telephone system and you have CAD. We're on Motorola and everything we do, so they're hooked together. But the telephone, the dispatcher answers, and what they're typing all the information into is computer aided dispatch. That is CAD. That is what, when they hit certain functions on the keys, it sends it to mobile data terminals and police cars and fire engines. And that's how we get calls dispersed quickly, as opposed to years ago when Ron and Charlie and we were and I was actually sitting in a patrol car and we just wrote it on a tablet next to us. So we have CAD. And then
Sheriff, was that a stone tablet that Chief Hess used?
That bad, but
Thank you, Mr. Morris.
the ECPC is the Emergency Communications Policy Committee. That was put into place when the RDC was being developed. The thought was a cog that's not really a cog. It was, the sheriff's office, the sheriff maintained control of personnel and day-to-day operations and the 911 system in Montgomery County, but we wanted to put a group over of all of our partners. So every partner agency has a seat at the table. It's elected or their designees or, township trustees. So everybody has a seat, everybody has a vote. And once again, we used to make fun. I mean, those who know my history, I'm the actual one who was put in charge to develop and implement the RDC. So it obviously has a special place in my heart. But when we were developing it, the direction given to me was, if they want it, make it happen. So we started calling ourselves, Burger King, and, anything you want, we'll do. And we still do that. So that policy committee helps make those decisions. And then there's three other groups that answer to them. And that is the police chiefs have a group that meets monthly. The fire chiefs have a group. And then a couple times a year, the Tactical Advisory Committee, the TAC group, who is usually city or township administrators who deal with the budget. So those are the groups. And PSAP means Public Service Answering Point. It's just kind of a term out there that the technical people use.
And how many PSAPs are there in the county presently, and how many dispatch centers?
There are eight PSAPs, and that is a dispatch center.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Posey, do you have questions?
No questions, just a comment. I did want to thank Captain Wheeler and Sheriff Streck for their hospitality during my tour. I learned a lot about what was going on there. This is not an area that I was ever familiar with before, but as these issues and questions come up before the township, it was certainly eye-opening to see what was actually involved with it and the level of sophistication that they have at the RDC.
Thank you. Mr. Culp.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Sheriff Streck for coming in and bringing his team to discuss this issue with us. Also, I'd like for Terry or the sheriff to forward me the information that was sent to Terry. If it wasn't sent to me before, I don't remember seeing it. But I think it sounded like it addresses one of the questions I had, which is how does the current RDC match up against standards for regional dispatch centers? And I think that's what you said you sent to Terry earlier. Is that correct, Sheriff?
Yeah,
I
Jay,
sent it.
Jay sent it, and we'll make sure that we send it to all three of the trustees. Make sure everybody has it. We'll resend that out.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you all joining us and giving us this presentation. And again, thank you all for your time.
Yeah, thank you, and Charlie and Ron, thank you for putting up with us and having us here. Take care, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Sheriff.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Hinkleman, you have new business resolution 67.
Yes, just a moment. I apologize. Don't know how I could. Okay. Thank you. The resolution before you this evening is a continuation of a discussion that we have been having for a while. That discussion pertains to our trash contract. Can everyone see this PowerPoint? Hopefully. Is that a yes?
Not as of yet.
You cannot see anything?
No, sir.
Interesting. Let me see. I apologize. How about now?
Yes, sir. We see it now.
Okay, great. So I will be as quick as I can with this, just to continue on our conversation. The timeline that we had for our trash collection was our contract is ending in 2020. So we did go out to get bids for service for 2021. As part of that, there was an updated set of bid specifications that was then bid upon by people for our 2021 through 2024 service. Just to give you a quick recap, as you're all aware, our current provider is Rumpke. The contractor provides service directly. Currently, people are paying $12.75 per month for trash and recycling. And we do have an option year available to us. So the timeline again, we received bids on the 23rd of September. We did receive 3 bids, 2 of which were no bids. Rumpke bid a formal full bid. Republic bid a no bid due to the fact that they wanted a 5-year agreement. And Waste Management bid a no bid, stating that our community is not currently part of their growth strategy. So what does that mean? That means that there are 2 options available in front of us. Option 1 is to take the current option year with our existing contract and have the existing bid specifications to continue. What that means in a nutshell is a 4% increase for service and still having weekly trash pickup, bi-weekly recycling in the exact same containers that our residents have currently. That would allow us to go for 1 more year, and then again, the rate would raise another 4%. The second option that is available to us is a new contract with the same provider, but that new contract would be under the bid specifications that we set out. Those bid specifications, as you are aware, allowed us to put in additional considerations or requirements of our provider. Those involved weekly recycling, as well as providing flexible options for our residents in terms of size of containers. So to allow them to utilize that, the cost would be an increase of $22 annually to have the service that allows for weekly recycling as well as multiple sizes, which is about $5.73 per quarter, which is how our community is billed, is quarterly. I would note, again, that would allow for multiple sizes of recycling containers. So when we look at the comparison, the piece I want to really touch on is the new bid specifications allow additional protections for the township. One major one being that if a provider were to leave, it has teeth to penalize that provider for leaving cans in our community. As we all are aware, unfortunately, that was the situation we dealt with in the two recent past. So that would provide protection to the township and our residents if that were to occur. It also would require the provider to provide multiple sizes of trash and recycling. So our residents would be provided a 95 or a 65 gallon trash can, and they could get a 95, 65, or 35 gallon recycle bin. And both of those would be, the trash can would be $1.50 per month, which is the same as what our residents are paying today. And the first bin for recycling would be free. So whichever one they chose would be free. If they wanted additional bins though, those would also be $1.50 a month, similar to the trash hauler. That contract also would be 3.5 years, which allows us to get off of the January timeframe, which has been troublesome for us in the past. So again, that would lock in this rate for 3.5 years without any increases for that time period. It also allows for that weekly recycling. So again, this is an example resident, just to provide, again, a little context. So currently, you'd have to use your 95 gallon, very large trash can, your large recycle toter, and you are increasing $1.53 per quarter for that bi-weekly recycling and weekly trash pickup. The new contract would allow you to have all those multiple sizes. It is an increase of $5.73 per quarter, but that does include now weekly recycling, as well as those a toter rental for recycling. With that said, if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. I know I've gone through it somewhat quickly. My staff report and memo is a little more detailed than that. I will also note we did receive 4 initial interest or requests for our bid specifications. So we were moving forward with the assumption we would hopefully get all 4 bids. One bidder decided not to bid. Again, as those 2 bidders noted, they have very specific reasons as to why they did not bid. I do not believe, unless we are interested in moving to a 5-year agreement, that we would likely get an additional bidder beyond what we have currently. With that said, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Mr. Posey, do you have any questions for Mr. Henkelman?
Oh, thank you for your presentation.
Mr. Culp?
I do not. Thanks, Kyle.
No, I would also like to thank Kyle for the presentation at this meeting and for the information and data that was shared with each of the trustees. He alluded to his report. It's probably 80 pages or so of data and pictures of cans and all kinds of information. So I thank you for your report, Mr. Henkelman. With that, you can take the PowerPoint down. We will open up the public comment period. If there's any individual who wishes to address the Board of Trustees, you are welcome to raise your hand and you'll be brought into the room. Prior to doing that, if your comments are regarding one of the zoning public hearings that we're going to have, there will be a different public comment period specific to those zoning requests. So if you want to make a comment on the zoning requests, I would encourage you to wait until the zoning meetings are happening, and then you will be offered an opportunity to speak then on that topic. But if anyone has a public comment on any other topic, You're welcome to come forward at this time. If you do come forward, please state your name and address for the record, and you will be given time to speak. Mr. Hinkleman, is anyone raising their hand?
I do not see.
Okay, you broke up a little bit on me, but you see no one. I will close the public comment period. I will make a motion to approve Resolution 67-2020, a resolution to authorize the Township Administrator to execute a new 3.5-year trash collection services contract. Therefore, be it resolved, the Miami Township Board of Trustees authorizes the Township Administrator to take the necessary steps to execute a new 3.5-year trash collection agreement with Rumpke, which has weekly trash and recycling collection. Is there a second?
I can second the motion.
I'll open up the discussion just by offering some comments to the public. I was just first into office when we transitioned from waste management to Rumpke. And as Mr. Hinkleman alluded, it was not very well received. It was a mess, to say the least. We had trash carts all over the township. And it was not a smooth transition. So I advocated very hard for a 3.5-year agreement so that we could move away from the switching of providers if that were to happen in the future. And the future is the end of this year. Because if we have to switch and have all these containers, if you'll recall 3 years ago, the weather was just plain terrible. And that added to the misery of these canned switchovers. So the first thing this contract offers is a 3.5-year term, moving any potential changes of providers to the middle of 2024. The second thing I like about this, and I went back and forth because you look at it, the option year is less expensive than this new contract. But the other comments that came with the new contract that were somewhat unforeseen in the last transition were the mandatory, everybody uses the same 95-gallon container for recycling. We had people living in condominium complexes that lived on the second floor, and they got this 95-gallon toter because they want to participate in recycling. And they have condominium rules that precluded them from having such a thing. So they're hiding them in bushes and doing everything they can. It was a mess there. The last thing I will mention is weekly recycling is being added. So not only are we giving our residents options for sizes of carts, we're giving them weekly recycling. And I personally have more recycling than I have regular trash. So I always thought it was kind of inverted because I have to struggle to fit everything in that recycling container. My trash container is half empty. So I like the new things that we're doing. So yes, it is an increased cost, but I think the new services, the weekly recycling, and the options for carts is well worth it and solves a lot of problems for all of our residents. And I think when they look at this and say $5 a quarter for a guaranteed 3-year price, because the other part to this is there's no guarantee that a year from now we would get different bids and they could be considerably higher. So I went back and forth, but I fully support this resolution and think it's the right decision. Any other discussion?
Yeah, John, I think you echoed all the things I was going to say. And for once, I get to say I echo your comments. But I did want to add, I was in favor of weekly recycling. We're now 3 years in, and I still see recycling bins out on the wrong week just because it's very challenging to keep track of when that might have happened and what that was. And I do think that recycling of certain elements is very important and will continue to grow. And as you mentioned, Mr. Morris, I think that the recycling is the way of the future for those that are considerate of those issues, and having options for both toter size and weekly recycling will improve outcomes, and locking in a reasonable increase for the next 3 years is good stewardship.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Culp?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
All right, we will now move into the public hearing portion of the meeting. No, I guess, yes, we are going to do that. So with that, I will make a motion to open public hearing for zoning case number 374-05. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Culp,
Aye.
Mr. Posey,
Aye.
Zoning case number 374-05 is now open. The following will be the order in which this hearing will proceed. Staff will give a report. The applicant will be invited to give a presentation. All those in favor, proponents, will be given an opportunity to speak. All those opposed, opponents, will be given a chance to speak. A time limit of 3 minutes will be placed on each of the speakers. When you come forward, please give your name and address for the record. The board will close the public hearing prior to making any action. The board will now hear the report of the staff. Mr. Hinkleman, have the legal requirements of this hearing been met? And do you have a recommendation from the Miami Township Zoning Commission that you could please report at this time?
Yes, thank you very much. The case before you is ZC 374-05, a plan development regulation amendment. This is a case where we are modifying development standards or a preliminary development plan for an existing plan development. In this case, we are talking about the Exchange at Spring Valley. The Exchange at Spring Valley is located to the east of Springboro Pike, within the middle of our township. The area itself is about 42 acres, and it is a mixed-use development that has been developed over the last 12 years or so. Most of the frontage along Springboro Pike is retail, with the backside of it being an office development. So when this was originally developed, it was really looked at as a service retail area to serve an office component. A number of office uses have been constructed over the years, and as well as some retail uses along the frontage. What is being requested this evening deals with changes to the preliminary development plan, as well as the development standards. The changes that are being proposed to the development plan are in front of you. You can see that area E and G are being modified to add a new area H. So as you can see, E is reduced in size, G is reduced in size, and the shared space in between is now H. They are doing this because they intend to sell area H, or to allow the development of area H for a use we will speak about here in a moment. I wanted to note some other changes that you can see in the preliminary plan, though. As you can see, area E and area G were shrunk, but overall the square footages is what I would like to discuss. So you will see area G is removing about 50,000 square feet of office. Area E is removing about 30,000 square feet. So when I say removing, the building does not exist, but the preliminary plan shows that is this amount of square footage that we would have anticipated in that area. So the preliminary plan showed a number of buildings that equate to an amount of square footage. So the new preliminary plan that they are proposing does not show what is roughly 80,000 square feet of 78,500 square feet of office square footage. What it does show, though, is an additional 100,000 square feet of senior living facility square footage. That is what they are proposing, is a 3-story senior living facility to replace the office square footage that was currently on site. The applicant is also provided, although not required to provide this level of detail, but they are providing this as their preliminary plan for the site for area H, which shows 7,000 square foot office building, an 8,000 square foot office building, and then again, that 100,000 square foot 3-story multifamily senior housing, which is 131 units is what they're proposing. So as you can see, they're also showing parking, landscaping. At the zoning commission meeting, there was a substantial discussion about the buffers along the east side of this site. If you can see in that aerial photo on the bottom of this photo, which is the east, there are other residential uses So there was a discussion, and the applicant did update their plans to add additional buffer along the east side. You'll also see in this preliminary plan that they are showing what they're calling a rest stop, what we would call a bike hub, as well as some gazebos and sidewalks and on-road shared lane signs for bike trails, as well as crosswalks, which was another long discussion that the Zoning Commission had about an interest in seeing additional effort being made for these new residents to be able to connect to our existing pedestrian and bike network. So the second piece of this is modifications to the development standards. Those modifications are necessary to accommodate the use that is being requested. The use, again, is not permitted currently, which is the senior living, assisted living facility. This location would be senior living, way that the language we would be accommodate assisted living if it were to change. But again, the development standards are being modified to allow that use in that area. So the other areas would still not, there's one other area that would permit it, but the majority of the site would still not permit any additional uses except for office and small amounts of retail. But in this area, it would permit 100,000 square feet of assisted living or senior care facility. It also goes into some detail about additional specifics in terms of regulations on these areas, including clarification that vinyl is not permitted within the exchange at Spring Valley as a primary element, that additional crosswalks are necessary, and again, as I noted, that buffer along the east side of the site be kept and made more substantial. These are just a couple of photos to show that buffer. Again, as I noted, the applicant has modified their plan to show that this buffer is not only staying, but is being improved. So with that said, the Zoning Commission did recommend approval in a 3-0 vote, and they stated they recommend approval of ZC 374-05, a plan development regulation amendment with the following recommendation: that the applicant come back with a plan to show bicycle and pedestrian connectivity to the paved trail on State Route 741, which you do have a plan that shows that in front of you. With that said, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them. Otherwise, I believe there are representatives of the applicant here who certainly can speak to any questions that you may have of them.
Thank you, Mr. Henkelman. Is the applicant wanting to come forward? The board will now hear from the applicant.
Can people hear me?
Yes, sir, Mr. Smith. Thank you.
My name is Greg Smith. I'm with the Ober Companies. In this case, 741 Developers. Our address is 3400 Newmark Road, Miamisburg, Ohio, 45342. Just want to thank Kyle for his presentation. We've owned the property in question for about 15, 16 years now. Marketed it steadily for office during that period of time. Office demand in the area has been a little bit weak, and unfortunately probably getting a little bit weaker. On the other hand, residential demand continues to be strong. I am excited about the proposal here because it's a area which is probably underserved in our current market. I think the active seniors has got a lot of opportunities. Homestead is a regional multifamily developer and are looking for ways to integrate their community into the overall exchange. So I think this proposal benefits the adjacent businesses, especially the restaurants and small retail up along the front could benefit. And it's I believe it fits in well as a transition between those uses and then the residential uses which are directly behind it. So I think it is a complementary use to what is existing in the Exchange Spring Valley. Without further ado, if you don't mind, I'd like to give Matt Canterbury of Homestead a chance to introduce himself. He will be the developer of the actual product and coming back before the Zoning Commission and the board, assuming we get approved tonight, with their final development plan as we go through the process.
Welcome, Mr. Canterbury.
Thank you very much for having me. Can you hear me?
I can, sir.
Wonderful. Matt Canterbury. I'm the Vice President at Homestead. Our address is 369 East Livingston Avenue in Columbus, Ohio, 43215. So thank you, Greg. Thank you, Kyle. We've been working very hard with both Kyle and Chris on this since we've identified the site as an option and a destination really for our product. The only things I'd like to add, because I think the staff report was very thorough, is just our use and how we sort of differentiate ourselves. As mentioned, we are active seniors. We are designated 55 plus. Our typical resident is between the ages of about 50 and 75. With that, they do get out. They are active within the community. One of the things that drew us to this location is not only the exchange itself, but also the ability to have connectivity to a lot of potential uses. The other thing that I believe is a differentiator is we do not offer any sort of acute care. We are not an assisted living facility. What we do have is the 131 units on the 3 stories that is surrounded around an interior amenity village. That amenity village is a 10,000 square foot piece that has things such as barbershops, pet salons, game areas, fitness, mail, business centers, so on and so forth. So our residents are able to come and have a small area for community to be part of their community as well within the building. Outside of that, our rent rates are at an attainable level. And by attainable, I use that verbiage as to not be seen as affordable. In our world, there are typically 3 different types of independent senior housing. That is luxury, that is market rate, which we fall in the market rate, and then that is HUD and or subsidized. So our rent rates are set right around typically the level of about 80% average median income. So we find that in today's world where a majority of seniors are retiring to be significantly reliant upon simply their Social Security, that this fits a very good niche in the neighborhood to allow folks to stay close to where they grew up and in their homes. So it's a little bit about us. We're extremely excited to be a part of this. The retail components should we be approved and move forward with this purchase, we will certainly be marketing them immediately. We are seeing those as medical uses, and hopefully medical uses that we'd be marketing towards would be that would be used by not only the seniors in our facility, but also the community at wide. Thank you.
Mr. Canterbury, should this be approved, clearly you'll have to bring another proposal back to the zoning commission and building plans, but what is your ideal timeline for construction?
Our timeline, as we have a very similar unit that is opened in Grove City here in Columbus, we're actually using very similar plans. As we go through, we would be going through the permit process. So let's just say after approval, that's 3 to 4 months. And then we'd be breaking ground immediately on the senior housing facility. That is about a 14 to 16 month build. So if we break in the spring, we would be open the following fall. So I'd say fall of 22.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, seeing none, thank you, gentlemen, for your time. We will now invite any proponents, those in favor of the plan wishing to come forward. Please raise your hand. You will be given an opportunity to speak. Seeing none, we will close the proponents. Those opposed to the plan who have wished to oppose the plan or raise your hand, you will now be given an opportunity to come forward. All right, seeing no one, we will close the public speaking period of the meeting. I will make a motion to close the public hearing for zoning case 374-05. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Culp,
Aye.
Mr. Posey.
Aye.
I'll make a motion, we approve Resolution 68-2020, a resolution to adopt a planned development regulation amendment for the exchange at Spring Valley under zoning case 374-05 for land zone PD5 planned mixed-use district. Therefore be it resolved, the Miami Township Board of Trustees approves the planned development regulation amendment under zoning case 374-05 and adopts the zoning commission recommendation. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Culp,
Aye.
Mr. Posey,
Aye.
All right, I will now make a motion to open the public hearing on zoning case. Where is it?
28195.
281-95. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Culp,
Aye.
Mr. Posey,
Aye.
Zoning case number 281-95 is now open. The following will be the order in which this hearing will proceed. Staff will give a report. The applicant will be given an opportunity for a presentation. Those in favor, proponents, will be given an opportunity to speak. Those opponents will also be given an opportunity to speak. A time limit of 3 minutes will be placed on each of the speakers. When you come forward, please give your name and address for the record. The board will close the public hearing prior to taking any final action. The board will now hear from the staff. Mr. Hinkleman, have the legal requirements of this hearing been met? And do you have a recommendation from the Miami Township Zoning Commission that you could please review at this time?
Thank you. The case before you is ZC 281-95. It is a PDRA, a Plan Development Regulation Amendment, to the existing approval of Crimson Creek. Crimson Creek, if you are not familiar, is located in the northern portion of our township. It is off of Munger Road. It is a standalone plan development that is within a large portion of R2 districts within our community. It is laid out currently as 8 lots. Of those lots, there are currently 2 structures on those lots. The 2 structures are homes, residential properties that were developed previously. The request before you this evening is to clarify standards that are part of this plan development. When this plan development was adopted in 1995, there was a site plan that was adopted, but it is not abundantly clear what can and cannot be constructed on each individual lot. So the developer is going through this process to assure all future purchasers of land what they are and are not able to do on their properties. It really fundamentally comes down to setbacks as well as a couple other standards that we'll talk about here in a moment. So the plan that was provided to the Zoning Commission is this plan. It shows you the 8 lots. For context, there is 1 owner of lot 6, 7, and 8. There is a single owner of lot 3. Lot 1, 2, 4, and 5, as you can see, lot 1 and 2 are closest to Munger. Then there's a home, which is owned by lot 3, and then lot 4 and lot 5. Those 4 lots that are available are potentially able to be developed. The owners of the other 2 properties are not currently looking to develop their properties further than what they have on their properties today. With that said, what this plan shows is 15-foot setbacks on the front and side for all the lots, except for lot 1, which shows a 25-foot setback along Munger Road. There was discussion at the Zoning Commission, primarily with the owners of lot 3 and lot 6, 7, and 8 about that standard for a front yard setback. There was substantial concern given to the commission about that being only 15 feet and not 30 feet. The applicant was not present at the Zoning Commission and did not have an ability to respond to that request. So the Zoning Commission recommendation you will see touches on the zoning commission's understanding of the residents. After the zoning commission meeting, staff did meet with the developer and went on site to see additional topography and concerns that the developer had about the site. And the developer at this time is asking for consideration for lot 4 and lot 5 to have a 15-foot setback, but is agreeable to lot 1 and lot 2, continuing to have that 30-foot front yard setback that was shown on the previous plan. So with that said, the zoning commission did discuss a number of other issues in the standards, but fundamentally it came down to the setbacks. I believe that there are representatives of the developer as well as representatives of the residents who live on Crimson Creek, both here, who may potentially have more information or able to speak to specific questions that you would have of them. With that said, I did, as I noted, go on site and look specifically at the topography of lot 4 and 5. As I said, the applicant is willing to accept the 30-foot setback for lot 1 and lot 2, as there is a larger portion of flat land, but they have substantial concerns about lot 4 and lot 5 due to the grade that is existing on those properties. So as you can see, all the purple lines, so if it's purple for you or blue or whatever color that is, the closer they are together, the steeper it is in a contour. So as you can see, moving from left to right on these lots, it is flatter along the left side. If you go even farther to the left, you go all the way, there's a hill that goes up to the next neighborhood. So you come down from that neighborhood, there is a flat portion, which is where the road is, and then a small portion next to the road. And then it goes down into a ditch, which actually has a stream. So based on what the developer has stated, this map is what the developer is asking for at this time. Shows lot 1, 2, 3, 6, and 8 meeting that 30-foot setback. Lot 7 would still be the 15-foot setback, and lot 4 and 5 would be the 15-foot setback from the front. Instead of that 30-foot setback. That is what the developer is asking for consideration this evening. And again, this is just to show you the existing home that is along Crimson Creek and lot 3. They're actually currently 33 feet, roughly 33 feet from the edge of the road. Crimson Creek is a private drive, so it is different than a public road where there would be a defined line that is a right-of-way. Again, these are just a couple photos that you can see of the site showing the thick brush that is there. I attempted to give you a scale of the hill, but I'm not tall enough to achieve that and have you have any scale to it. So with that said, the Zoning Commission did recommend approval of ZC 28195 in a 3-0 vote. And they stated that the Plan Development Regulation Amendment have the following recommendation. 1, change the standards to not permit a sign, and 2, change the minimum front yard setback to 30 feet. The first comment, again, was due to staff putting in on the development standards what are basic standards that we have in all residential districts or planned development districts, where there is a permission for a shared monument entry sign. The residents that currently live there stated that they were never going to want a sign at the entry, so they did not need that standard. So the recommendation is to remove it. And again, as I noted, the residents also had concerns about the 15-foot setback that was proposed in the standards and requested that it be 30 feet. With that said, if there's any specific questions that I can answer, I'd be more than happy to do so. But I do believe there are representatives of both the developer and residents that live on the street who are there or who are here tonight that can speak to any questions you may have of them.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Hinkleman? Kyle, just to clarify, so this is a zoning commission recommendation to change the standards with regard to potential development. This is not a development that is being proposed, and should a development be proposed, a new zoning case would have to be brought forward with the actual development plans. Is that correct?
No. So this is modifying, in a residential development, it's a little different because the home itself would just have a permit. So these standards would be the formal standards that would be met when a home is applied for with a zoning certificate. So what would potentially happen is lot 1 would be sold. They would ask to build a home, and they would be required to meet the setbacks that were adopted under this zoning case. So those standards and those setbacks would be adopted by this case. They would not come back before the zoning commission or the board of trustees for approval. It would just be a staff approval of the certificate as long as they met those standards.
So potentially, if we were to pass this 15-foot front yard setback, that would give the developer, the home builder, the option to go up to 15 feet or back as far as 30 feet. They would not be mandated to 15 feet. Is that accurate?
Correct. 15 feet would become the minimum. They could make it as far as they wanted. The developer did state that they've had a number of people looking to purchase, particularly lot 5, where 30 feet becomes an economic issue for them due to the grade. But again, I believe the developer certainly can speak to why they can't meet that 15 or that 30 feet requirement. But that would be an example.
Thank you. All right, with no further questions for Mr. Hinkleman, if the applicant would like to come forward and give a presentation, please state your name and address for the record.
Sam, are you there? You are unmuted, Sam. Can you hear me? One of these phone numbers. I am going to attempt to make one of these phone numbers be allowed to talk. Let's see. Sam, are you there? One of the phones, let's see. Unfortunately, we had challenges. Sam, are you there?
Hello. Okay. This is Doug Mays.
Okay, we have Sam Christ and Doug Mays, the representatives of the developer. Maybe one of two of you can talk so we don't talk over each other if possible.
Sam, go ahead.
Okay. Sam Chris, my address is 9594 Bellway. This phone, is there an echo?
Yeah, Sam, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute Doug, and then I will unmute Doug when you are finished, if that's all right.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Kyle, for the presentation. I appreciate it. Our main concern with the construction, we've run into builders that they're looking at anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 extra site cost with foundation, piers, etc. And we had a buyer ready to write an offer, and it was just too cost prohibitive for her. And we've run into that with 2 or 3 others. And that's the main concern. If you go back 30 foot, you're right where it starts dropping off. And it's just, that's the main thing. It's just really cost prohibitive. And we have a lot of people that like the area, and they've called different builders, and there are some very good restrictions, the covenants there. So the subdivision will be very protected. It's just right now it's cost prohibitive, and people can't, just can't make it work.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you both.
Thank you.
Sam, does Doug have anything he'd like to add? I can't unmute him. Doug, can you unmute yourself if there's anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't have much more than that. The reason that is a private lane because the expense in the building sites. 4 and 5 is almost impossible for people to build a reasonably priced house. So we started off in 1995 with a private lane, and evidently the zoning restrictions have changed. So that's the reason why we're coming in for the changes. So hopefully it'll be fine with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will now give an opportunity for anybody in favor of the plan. Any proponents who wish to come forward in support of the plan, please come forward.
Okay, I have Rex. Rex, are you there?
Mr. Ratterstorff.
Yes, Rex Raderstorff. And the address on Crimson Creek is 6354. Is that all you need as far as?
Yes, sir, that will do. Thank you.
Great. So my wife and I have the properties at the end of the cul-de-sac, the 3 lots, 6, 7, and 8. And I take it that I'm a proponent of the zoning commission's recommendation from the last meeting, which would include the 30-foot easement. So, and as far as cost that Doug and the realtor were talking about, I believe when this house, the house we live in, was built, I can remember one of the Mays boys telling me that they had to put in an unbelievable amount of extra cost into the foundation here because of zoning issues or whatever the permits were saying. So that's my input, and I would like to stick with the 30-foot easement that the zoning commission was recommending after our first meeting.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to come forward in favor of the plan? All right, anyone wishing to come forward opposed to the plan?
I have, well, nope. I have one more, I believe, who rose a hand right before you finished there. It is Joanne Martin.
Okay, Ms. Martin. Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
We can, thank you.
Okay. My name is Joanne Martin. I live at 6324 Crimson Creek Drive. I would like to, I'm like Rex. I want to be a proponent of the recommendation that was approved on September 8th by the Zoning Commission to have the 30-foot setback. My reasoning is the aesthetics of this whole entire area off of Munger Road would be, well, since September 8th, as I drive around, I've looked and I see no houses in this area with a 15-foot setback. When I go into an urban area or a historic area with sidewalks, then you see the 15-foot setback. So I just feel that and Kyle, you maybe noticed that the setting's beautiful on this street. And the sense is that the aesthetics would be upset if we allow a house to be built 15 feet from the street. So it's sort of a, I understand the financial component and understand the topography. However, you know, there's some flexibility maybe in the asking price of the lot. Maybe, do you know what I mean? The seller maybe could lower his price, allowing the buyer the ability to invest in the site cost to build the house. So there's some give and take, but I just feel like when we bought this house on this street, the aesthetics were so important to us, the feel, the look, the whole neighborhood in this part of Miami Township. And I just think if we're 33 back, you go 15 feet, it's just gonna look like a domino, it just won't have the good feel. So that's my thinking, is if price and cost are the issue, let the buyer and the builders and the buyer and the seller work it out, negotiate. That's my thinking.
Ms. Martin, if I could ask you a question, are you opposed to all development, or would you like to have neighbors as long as they're 30 feet off the road like your house?
I'd be fine with neighbors.
Okay.
I would be fine with neighbors. Just, and as was mentioned, the protective covenants for the houses on this street are, we feel we would get houses that work, and I don't know the right terminology, but would fit in this area, the whole Munger Point, all of this whole, I've been looking at all the streets and the houses are beautiful. And so I think that would continue, and I would have no problem with neighbors.
Excellent, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there anyone else who would like to come forward and speak on this case?
So oh, maybe not. I thought Mr. Chris rose his hand again. Maybe not.
All right, hearing none, I will make a motion to close the public hearing for zoning case number 281-95.
He did raise his hand again. Would you like to speak or hear from the developer one more time, or the representative for the developer?
Hopefully it won't have that terrible echo, but yes, I will allow them to come back for a moment.
All right, Sam, you raised your hand. You have to unmute your phone.
Okay, can you hear me? Sorry.
If you silence the speaker on your...
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Okay. And I forget her name. I believe it was Rose, on the owner of Lot 3. As far as the price, most real estate properties are worth what ready, willing, and able buyers will pay for a property. And we have had probably 3 or 4 buyers that are willing to pay $40,000 for the lots, which we believe are very, very competitive when you look at some of the other areas that are, you know, you're getting anywhere from 80 to 175,000 for lots. As nice as these lots are with trees and that. There is from the north property line of Lot 3, there is a tremendous buffer of trees, bushing, underbrush. So there are buffers out there for each lot, very dense buffers. So, and then Kyle, that one plan that you put up there that had, I think it had some purple in it, and it showed the red line with the proposed two 15-foot setbacks and then the two 30-foot on lot 1 and 2. If you look at that, it isn't, you know, I don't think there's too much concern there. Like I said, with the covenants and restrictions, anything going in is going to be very nice out there. And also, I know she said driving around in the subdivisions, she didn't see any 15-foot setbacks. Well, you don't, these lots are very unique because of all the trees, and you have a road, the road actually running through the lot. And I think that explains a little bit of why you don't have 15-foot setbacks. You know, you've got 40 foot of frontage, or 40 foot of length of the lot, and then you have the road, and then the lot picks up again. But all we're trying to do is get it before it drops off. It's extra tax dollars to the township. The develop, you know, he's pretty eminent on the plans that come in there. So I know the homes will be nice. So, but I think the lots are priced very, very competitive at $40,000 for as nice as they are. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I will reiterate my motion to close public hearing 281-95. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Culp,
Aye.
Mr. Posey,
Aye.
At this time, the Board of Trustees has the option to make a motion to approve as the Zoning Commission has recommended with 30-foot stepbacks. Approve with modifications. The developer/owner is requesting a modification to 15-foot setbacks on lots 4 and 5. Or we can deny the resolution completely. I am going to abstain from this, not offer a motion or vote on this, given that I live about a block away and was actually called to the zoning meeting. So I don't think it's in my best interest to vote one way or the other.
I'll make a motion that we accept the zoning commission's recommendation.
Yeah, I'll second.
Aaron, will that suffice, or do we need them to read the entire resolution?
I think by Don stating that he is approving the zoning board recommendation, I think that will suffice.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Morris,
I abstain.
Mr. Culp,
Aye.
Mr. Posey.
Aye.
All right, thank you. We are now moving into department head comments. Any department head that wishes to come forward and share any information with the board?
Mr. Morris, really quickly, I just got a message as part of the public comment portion. There was a resident who, I guess, raised their hand and I did not catch it. They wanted to speak about West Carrollton schools. Are you agreeable to allow them to speak?
With regards to the zoning case that just passed?
I believe it has to do with West Carrollton schools.
So they just want to offer a public comment.
They just want to offer a public comment about West Carrollton schools, yes.
Yes, I'm happy to open the floor to the resident wishing to make a public comment. I recognize Mr.
Henry, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Donald Henry. I've lived in Miami Township since 1968. I'm in my 7th year as an elected school board member for the West Carrollton City Schools. West Carrollton City Schools serve families in the North District from St. Henry's Parish and Cox Arboretum up to Stroop Road. Obviously, a majority of Miami Township is served by Miamisburg School District. The countdown is on, 4 weeks to Election Day. While some may consider the presidential election to be a big thing on the ballot, for us, it's issue number 17, renewal of the 5.5 mil operating levy. You can find out more about issue 17 and what else is happening in the district at westcarrolltonschools.com, then clicking on district news. The West Carrollton School District will have issue 17 on the November 3rd ballot to renew a 5.5 mil operating levy. The operating levy was originally passed in 2016 as a 5-year limited term levy. A renewal of the operating levy means no new taxes for residents. There are 3 types of property tax options that school districts in Ohio may put on the ballot. One is a building bond issue. That's for physical construction, new construction of facilities. An operating levy, which is what we're talking about this evening. The 5.5 mil passed in November 2016 generates approximately $2 million annually for daily operations of the school district. And lastly, a permanent improvement levy. This is used to provide major expenses like a new roof on a building, a new school bus, a building security system, or paving parking lots that deteriorate over time. Our last permanent improvement levy was passed in 1996. Renewal of our 5.5 mil operating levy will generate $2 million per year. That is about 5% of our operating revenue. This represents salaries and benefits of about 30 of our teachers, just to get it in a perspective. In closing, the levy or bond issue funds generated are separated into accounts by the school district treasurer. Spending from those accounts may only be used for the purpose that the levy or bond issue was passed. For example, funds for a building bond issue may not be used for operating costs, maintenance, or equipment. The treasurer of the school district oversees all of the accounts, and the state of Ohio conducts audits of district accounting. In closing, if there are any questions of our residents on this renewal operating levy, I wish that they call Ryan Sloan, the school district treasurer, at 937-859-5121, extension 1111. Thank you to the trustees and the department heads for listening this evening and giving me the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you, Mr. Henry, for coming forward and sharing this information with us. Thank you for your long-term residency in the township and your service to the West Carrollton Board of Education. This is definitely a trying year, and we appreciate your efforts to keep our children in school and get them educated in these trying times. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, now we are moving to department head comments. I didn't see anyone coming forward, so we will move past department head comments. Elected officials, Mr. Newell, do you have anything?
I have none.
Oh, there you are. Mr. Posey,
Nothing today, thank you.
Mr. Colt?
I have none.
I have nothing. I will make a motion to enter into work session at 7:35 for the purposes of talking about a land bank demolition proposal. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Culp,
Aye.
Mr. Posey.
Aye.
Mr. Snyder, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, board. I will be brief tonight. I know I gave you some information in your packets. The purpose of the work session tonight is just to give you an overview of the target areas that we are proposing to submit to the land bank as part of the demolition program. And we wanted to get a general understanding and agreement with the board and see if you had any concerns regarding the properties that we were potentially going to submit. Obviously, the actual demolition of these would be dependent upon our ability to budget and allocate funds to complete this work. I do have some quotes on the demolition works, and the initial quotes I'll go over here briefly in a moment, but we do have three areas. One area at the north of the township along Union Road, which we're proposing to submit. We do have one parcel in that area that we're proposing to potentially demolish. Another area along Lower Miamisburg Road, which has, again, one parcel. And then finally, a third area along Farmington Road that has two parcels, one of which is the fire damaged parcel that we'd previously discussed. So these target areas may end up ultimately being combined depending on the feedback we receive from the Montgomery County Land Bank upon submission to them. I give you a brief timeline as well. We're required to submit our target areas to the land bank by November 4th and then submit the actual properties lists that we would like to have demolished by November 25th. So at that time, we do have to commit submitting a $5,000 deposit on each property. So obviously, prior to the November 25th, we want to have some agreement that we are prepared to go forward with each of those properties. We would have to go through a nuisance abatement hearing on each parcel. We have received a letter from Montgomery County Public Health indicating that each parcel does meet the criteria for demolition. So you've got some pictures and a little bit of background on each parcel. Obviously, during the public hearings for the nuisance abatements, we would go into more detail on the individual properties, but you can see the fire damaged parcel there along Farmington Road. There is another parcel immediately adjacent to that, which also has a number of issues. All of these properties essentially are unsecured. They've got damage to the roofs, they've got debris. They're not protected against the weather and elements, so there are issues with potentially animals, rain, other debris getting into the homes, further damaging them. Most of them have broken windows, unsecured doors, things like that. So obviously the fire damaged property is not secured as well. Our initial demolition quotes that we've received from two different companies at this point for all four properties range from approximately $12,800 per property to upwards of about a little less than $20,000. The Lower Miamisburg Road property is the more expensive property to potentially demolish out of that set because in addition to the house, it also has some outbuildings that would potentially need to be demolished as well in order to completely bring the site to a clean, clear site. So to do all 4 properties, you're looking at approximately $59,000 to a little over $74,000 to do all 4. And again, it would be a 1-to-1 match with the land bank if the land bank does approve each parcel. So we would be looking at approximately $30,000 to $35,000. Those quotes, at least from one of the companies, does include an asbestos survey. Obviously, that is something that if significant asbestos issues were discovered on the properties, that would be something we would have to reevaluate, I believe, with the land bank to determine what a cost would be for that and if we still wanted to proceed. So we did have one company that quoted a quote of $5,000 for the burned out property, but ultimately those companies all have to be approved by the land bank. We do want to make sure that obviously they're disposing of the materials properly and following all the required regulations. So with that, like I said, I want to keep this short, but wanted to give you an overview of the properties and the reasons of why that each property we were submitting those. Again, essentially abandoned properties have not been paying taxes or delinquent in the taxes. Each property has a little bit different history, but definitely in need of being secured and potentially being removed from the area. So are there any initial questions from the board regarding the areas that we're proposing to submit or concerns with any of these?
Terry, you were unmuted. Now you're muted.
I saw. I do that every third meeting. I get mute and unmute confused. What are the requirements for asbestos abatement within the land bank program or the demo program? Are there any? I mean, you sort of just mentioned that some of those quotes included asbestos abatement.
Well, they include an asbestos survey. So the contractor would have to go through first and determine if there is asbestos on the properties. Sometimes that can be in the roof shingles. Sometimes it can be in insulation or siding. A lot of times we have some neighborhoods where asbestos was used in particular on the eaves underneath the roofs and things like that. So it really kind of depends on what the individual circumstance is and how easily that material can be removed. But again, my understanding from the land bank would be that if the property were demolished, the contractor would have to follow all the EPA requirements for removal of that. That again really depends on what type of material it is and what condition it's in. Sometimes the tiling can be removed more easily than say insulation that's been blown, you know, into the property or into the walls or something like that. So.
Yeah, I guess what I'm not understanding is if the demolition company finds asbestos, that increases the price. Does that increase our obligation?
Yes, it would potentially.
Did you have them quote any prospective types of costs for asbestos abatement?
No, they have not provided any potential costs yet because they have not done the survey to determine what asbestos would be on those properties. But
I think getting some general figures to that number would help us understand our potential liability or our obligation in that process. And
yeah,
I've done some asbestos litigation in the past, and I know that some things, like you just mentioned, can be very inexpensive to remediate, but some can be very strong. And I'd like to get a sense of that before we obligate ourselves to public funds use.
Okay. We can certainly contact the land bank and the contractors to see what we can provide.
Just some general ranges would be useful.
Any further questions? All right, hearing none, I will make a motion to close the work session at 7:44. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Morse,
Aye.
Mr. Culp,
Aye.
Mr. Posey,
Aye.
All right, in a moment, we will make a motion to move into executive session, and assuming that passes, we will go into executive session. That will close this public hearing. At the conclusion of the executive session, we will just adjourn the meeting, so there will be no further action made available to the public today at this meeting of October 6th, 2020. So with that, I will make a motion. We move into executive session at 7:44 for the purposes of a conference with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are the subject of pending or imminent court action in accordance with ORC 121.22, and also to adjourn into executive session for conferences with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are subject to imminent court action in accordance with ORC 1.1.22 subsection G. So there are two items we will be addressing in executive session at 7:44. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion?
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Culp,
Aye.
Mr. Posey.
Thank you. We will now close this Zoom session and open a new one in executive session. So thank you all for your attendance.